You'll be receiving e-certificates that will be sent to your emails. Please don't forget to accomplish the evaluation forms later. Leave us some questions if you have any, and our speakers and reactors will be addressing them later. We are very thankful for over 1,000 participants who registered from Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia, and around the world. We have invited engineers, doctors, and professionals from Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines to talk about this important matter at hand. But before we start our webinar, let's ask the presence of God to lead and help us. To other religions, you may say your own prayers. To welcome us, let us hear from the University President of Palawan State University, Dr. Ramon M. Docto. We'll go back to Dr. Ramon M. Docto. First, we must introduce our speakers and reactors. Our first speaker currently holds a position as Vice Rector for Research, Development, and Partnership at Universitas Pertamina. He is also an Associate Professor in Department of Management at Universitas Indonesia. Previously, he was Independent Commissioner at PT Pertamina Geothermal Energy and member of Nomination and Remuneration Committee at the Board of Commissioner of PT Perusahaan Listrik Negara Persero. He was also Executive Director of Indonesia Institute of Management Development and Managing Director of Institute of Management of Universitas Indonesia. Our first speaker is Dr. Budi W. Soetipjo, and his topic is Impact of COVID-19 Leading in Oil and Gas Uncertainties. Our second speaker has been practicing as management consultant in the capital projects and offshore industry for 23 years prior to joining Universiti Teknologi Petronas, or UTP. As the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research and Innovation at UTP, he is leading the business development portfolio and innovating the research ecosystem to increase the stakeholders' value. He has spearheaded several strategic initiatives in the area of competency development, including being one of the pioneering groups in Malaysia to develop wind engineering standard and competency as the chairman of the Wind Code in 1999. He has also served as the Honorary Secretary of the Malaysian Oil and Gas Services Council and maintained his focus as the chairman of the Competency and Training Working Group. He has served at the national level under the patronage of the Human Resources Development Fund for the development of National Occupational Skills Standard and as the chairman of the Sectorial Training Committee. He is also the current fellow member of the Energy Institute UK and is overseeing the development of niche professional accreditation tracks in Malaysia for engineers in the energy sector. He graduated summa cum laude in civil engineering in Texas, USA in 1983 and subsequently fast-tracked towards the completion of his PhD in 1988 from the same alma mater. Our second speaker is Professor Engineer Dr. Mohammed Shahir Liew, and he will talk about digitalization in oil and gas as a new normal. Our third speaker has been into health, safety, and environment in the last 14 years, specializing occupational safety and health, emergency medical services, and organizational startups. He has worked and supported various companies, including North Oil Company, Maersk Oil Qatar, International SOS, and DESCO, a drilling company in the Philippines. He's assigned both in onshore and offshore oil and gas installations in Angola and Qatar. He is also a registered nurse and a petroleum engineering graduate. He has a master's degree in environmental management and currently taking Doctor of Education major in educational management at Palawan State University. He is the CEO and President of Petroshphere Incorporated Philippines and Editor-in-Chief of Palawan Daily News. Our third speaker is Engineer Harthwell Capistrano, who will speak about the impact of COVID-19 among global workers in oil and gas industry. We also have 3 reactors in this webinar. The first reactor is the Director of Technology Transfer Office under Research and Innovation at Universiti Teknologi Petronas, Malaysia. He graduated with Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering at the University of Hartford, Connecticut, USA in 1996. He also holds Master of Business Administration in the University of Strathclyde, Glasgow, UK, obtained in 2013. He joined PETRONAS in 1996 and has been involved in different roles, mainly in technology development over the last 23 years. He started his career as a planning and engineer, planning maintenance section, Petronas Gas Berhad. From 1997, he was involved in various engine-related development projects, including attachment at Sauer Petronas Engineering at Switzerland. In the late 2005, he moved to Petronas Research Centurion Berhad, where he was responsible for the development and commercialization of engine through licensing arrangement in China. Our first reactor is Mr. Zaimizi Hamdani. Our second reactor is an HSE professional and currently a faculty in Palawan State University, Philippines. He has worked in the academe for around 7 years and more than 12 years in the oil and gas industry in the Middle East. He has worked in Rawabi United Safety Services Company Limited and with Baker Hughes in Saudi Arabia prior to coming back to the academe as faculty. He graduated with Bachelor of Science in Petroleum Engineering and earned his master's degree in Mathematics Education in Palawan State University. Our second reactor is Engineer Jarico Padrones. Our third reactor is a lecturer and head of research, community service, and innovation at Universitas Pertamina and chairman at PT Unimaxima Lentera Nusantara. He has written various publications and researches. He graduated Bachelor of Engineering on Computing and Communication Systems Engineering in 2009 in the University of Manchester and earned his PhD on Electrical and Electronic Engineering in 2013. Our third reactor is Dr. Wahyu Agung Pramudito. For our first speaker, let's welcome Dr. Budi W. Soetipjo.
Thank you very much, Faith. Thank you very much for having me in this event, in the webinar. And thank you for all participants today. I would like to present my ideas on how to lead in oil and gas uncertainties. I think we have limited time, so I'm not going to go through every word or maybe every page, so that we have sufficient time for discussions. Next, please. So I start with the new reality that the industry is experiencing a third price collapse in 12 years. I have chart in the next slide, actually. So we have a demand drop because of this crisis. We all know that we have to be restrained. We have to work at home. So we cannot, well, some of us still cannot go to the office. Most of us are not going to the mall like before. So maybe only once a week. I myself go to the grocery shopping only once a week. So that creates a demand drop. Okay, we don't travel. So the airlines also collapse. And because of that, the effect is to the oil demand. And also the financial and structural health is also getting worse, of course. That's a consequence of the demand drop. And that's adding to the previous intense competition before this pandemic, and the rapid technology development, and also government pressure, to use more of the green energy other than the fossil energy. Next, please. So this is just to give you a picture of how the oil price goes up and down, and three collapses that I mentioned before. And this the last one. This is only the beginning. I think no one knows when this pandemic is going to end. But looking at the previous spike and downturn, you can see these uncertainties of the pricing. Next, please. Well, similar to natural gas pricing, although it's not that as bad as the oil, but still the trend is going downward. If we see from the last 20 years, something like that, maybe more than 20 years. Next, please. Okay. So the challenge for the COVID is how we operate safely. Okay. We have I think we heard the news already, how the storage of the oil storage is full already. I mentioned before, so the price is falling. The capital market closing, all but for the largest players, and oil and gas failed to keep pace with the broader market. I have the data here, but this is before COVID-19, that TRS growth is below the market. Yeah, the annual TRS growth is below the market. Next, please. You can see from this picture, like oil and gas is below the even the S&P 500. quite almost half actually the total return to shareholders. This is very important because that's a return for to shareholders that makes the industry no longer attractive for the investors. Next, please. And now we are talking about the energy mix. We can see the growth actually, the portion of the new energy. The yellow, the green one is the crude oil. It's getting smaller. And look at the wind and solar. Yeah. It's getting bigger, the portion. So there is also biomass. So there is, oh no, not biomass, the biomass also. So there is a movement toward more renewable or sustainable energy. Next, please. So we have to, or the oil and gas industry has to anticipate a decline because of the, not only because of COVID, but also the reality, the shift to the market, where we now see how the electric cars are being developed. It's more intense. Indonesia is getting more and more intention to use this electricity car. A global demand for gas is double. However, the peak we predict is in 2035. The same thing with for the power generation. We will see, you know, the portion for using this energy. So for the gas, still power generation is the dominant, but however, it's going to level off and then decline because of this new energy like wind and solar. Next, please. You can see here that this is for the oil, how the dominant transportation, you know, as a user or customer of the oil. Once the transport is, the energy for transport is shifting to electricity, for example, or other energy, then this is going to be a threat for the oil industry. And same thing with the current situation where we cannot go anywhere, we cannot travel, we are not allowed to travel. And we go to the office not every day, some of us, including me, only once, twice a week, or take turn this week on, next week on, off. So basically we cut in about half or maybe 30, 40%. Look what happened to the transport. Once we don't move, we don't go anywhere, it will affect the oil. The buildings, the same thing too, although this is quite small, but still if we don't use the building because we work at home and we now find the benefit of working at home with all the technology, of course it will affect the demand for the oil. I think we can see also the green one, right? Because the power stations, the highest demand is from industry. If the industry doesn't work, then the oil price will, the oil demand will be down as well. Next, please. And different threat actually for the gas, because the gas more of a power station. Okay, the threat is coming from the new energy, the renewable energy like wind and solar. So more and more power stations are now using wind and solar because of the what's so-called clean energy, and somewhat it's getting cheaper than the gas. Next, please. So it is likely that the oil price will never reach the level in 2019. Well, we don't know, but we cannot expect that since commuting and working habits also decrease. We now enjoy working at home. We don't travel that much, although we start to travel. Actually, in Malaysia today is the holiday. So the government in Asia is creating more holidays so that we can spend our money, you know, to the entertainment places, to the zoo, to the shopping malls, you know, except me because I have a assignment for this webinar. Otherwise, I'll be going out, you know. So this is the way, you know, to induce, to stimulate the travel, okay? Because otherwise, no one is going to get out. Everybody's still scared, especially in Indonesia, because not scared, it's uncertain, you know. There are many news like it's not safe going to the mall, you know, it's not safe going to the buildings and everything. So that makes us restrain our activity. The next one is renewable energy. Well, we have talked about this energy for so long, you know, but still not yet replaced the fossil fuel or natural gas. However, with the research, with the technology, this renewable energy is getting cheaper. More and more research, more and more production. You know, the scale of economy is reached when the volume is higher. So with the more production, more use, more demands, you know, the production cost per unit is going to get lower. So it's a matter of time whether we are comfortable using this wind and solar energy. Next, please. So I use the title from managing probable to leading possible. So we are talking about the possibility, okay? We are all anxious. Why? Because it's unknown, uncontrolled, okay? This is not what we call sleeping with the enemies, you know? This is real, but we cannot see. This is not a ghost. That makes us anxious. We cannot solve the situation using the past procedures. It has to be a new habit. And this is scary because what new habits we don't know. We call new normal, but no one can define what new normal is. You know, that we need to ask different questions. This is new situation. We cannot use the past data. We cannot use the previous patterns of thought. So we have to challenge the assumptions. Do we have to do this like before? Is it the real situation? Can we solve with the previous technique? It's different. So we need to consider multiple perspectives. Why? Because we need to open up our mind. Okay, we need to seek out and listen to the opinions. So no one knows exactly, no one is expert in this thing. Okay, we can collect data as much as possible, but yet again, we don't know for sure. Okay, we have to move outside our comfort zone. Okay, and we have to expand our set of solutions. We cannot stay with the existing one. Okay. This is very important because from probable to possible. Next, please. We need to have this is I think what's important for the oil and gas to do, what we call small, safe to fail experiments. Okay, we need to challenge the existing system. We need to pick several good but different solutions. I know it's not easy since we are in the comfort zone with the technology, with the way we are doing the job, but the situation is totally different. It's not like we have experienced before. It's none, you know. So we have to do this. Well, again, safe to fail, meaning that if it's fail, it's not going to cost the company that much. Okay, and then we need to look for the edges of an issue. Okay, we cannot find the root cause because the problem is different. Okay, we need to tinker the periphery. Maybe different location. It's not what we call core now. May not be core. I mean, core before may not be the core now. Okay, We need to think the new ways, maybe very small shifts. Okay, we have to break out the familiar patterns and use a whole new approach. Okay, if we don't have multiple perspectives, we cannot have the new approach because we will have the same perspective and we are going to come back to the same approach, which is the old approach. This may not work now. Okay, so this is the art, how to record the familiar pattern, but do the experiment in low-risk ways. Okay, this is the paradox. Usually, if you want to break out, you want to innovate, we have to do the big experiment, higher risk experiment. But this time, we don't have that much money anymore. Okay, we are declining, minus in growth. So we have to be careful with the money, but still doing the experiment to find the new approach. Next, please. So this is what I propose. Leading possible with agility. So create future. Okay. Shaping something new rather than revising or updating the past. The past is totally different than now and the future. Look for the opportunities more than evolutions. Okay. We have to have visions, what is right, and adapt quickly. So pace and speed is very important because the decline is very, very quick. You don't know. All of a sudden, more and more companies, not only oil and gas, are going bankrupt. And we have to learn. So I think this forum is very important because we can learn from each other. Okay, so we can understand the situation. We can exchange ideas. In the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia could be different, the situation. But we can learn from each other. Next, please. So these are the agility I'm talking about. They are for agility. Okay. So agility actually is the ability to quickly respond to the opportunities. Okay. So we have to be able to change, to learn, to act quickly. So flexibility is the key, not only for organizations, but also for individuals. Next, please. First, we talk about strategic agility. So we have to switch our mind from market share to market opportunity. What opportunity is ahead of us? How the customers respond to us? Okay. And then we have to penetrate the existing markets by creating new and uncontested markets. This is what I always call arena. We have to provide solution to the market. Okay. We cannot beat our competitors. We have to redefine the competition. Create the new arena, the new market. Okay, that no one thinks before. And then we have to have a blueprint for action so that we have a plan. We need to build a capacity for continual strategic change. And we have to, but for that, we need to understand the business context and environment. Really understand. And target anticipating future stakeholders' wants and needs, especially the customers and the environment. So what do they want? What happens if working from home that we actually have envisioned before, but never happens? Now we have to do it. How if we stay like this for a long period of time, 5 years, 10 years? Once we do this for 5 years, it becomes our habit. It's difficult to switch to the old habits. Okay, we don't have to have a seminar face to face. We can do this. So this becomes the new normal. If we can exchange information by having this video conference, why do we have to meet? Next, please. So organizational. Before we talk about strategic, meaning the market, but internally the organization must respond. Okay, it is to create autonomous team This team has to understand the desired culture and firm identity in order to respond to new opportunities. So organizational agility means continuous experiment, improve, remove boundaries. So no silos anymore, including with the customers. So create networks and ecosystems for improvement. We cannot do this alone. We have to make friends with other even competitors. Next, please. Now we talk about leadership. So this is important for all leaders in the ONG industry. Okay, because these leaders are the bridge between the organization and individuals. Leaders are the commander. They create culture. They model behavior. If we talk about agility, we talk about the situation. Okay, we try to change the organization, but the leaders don't change. They somehow refuse to see the reality. This agility is not going to work. Okay, most of the leaders are in the expert at the bottom level. What we need is the synergist level, the 1% level at the top. Next, please. What is at the top? At expert, they only know the SME, true. But at the top, they have to be capable to stand in the after store. So they have to be able to ride the store. Okay. But before that, they have to pioneer new forms of the organization. So I think leaders' role is very important here. We cannot just say anything technology, strategy, but the leaders don't change. It's not going to work. Next, please. And now we talk about the individuals, meaning employees, us, everybody. Okay. So we have to be able to learn and grow. You have to have the mindset and the skill set. Growth mindset, curiosity, asking questions, taking appropriate risk. Okay. This is important not only through training. It has to be coming from ourselves. Okay. So we have to be able to find the enjoyment of learning. Okay. Next, please. This is the agility. This is just example. How agility in oil and gas industry. You can see here a stable backbone and DC, dynamic capabilities. So it has to be simple structure and clear expectations. Okay. Leadership as a role, not a title. People make decisions. Okay. And then up-to-date data. Decisions made once by people in the room. Rapid prototyping. Test and learn. Test and learn. Test and learn. Okay. And then the people, in addition to shared cultural values, there has to be can-do mindset. See, because we don't know what we can do actually. It's a new situation. Next, please. So we can see here like some example. For example, the elimination of waste. I highlight some of them, like total quality control. So we don't make the same errors. Elimination of waste, setup reduction. So we need, in general, we need to be more efficient. Okay, we need to redesign the workflow so that we can move quickly. Improve the work processes. We need to have a preventive maintenance, for example. Continuous improvement is getting more and more important. Next, please. Okay, I think there'll be all of it for me. Please, if you continue for the next speakers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. To our participants, if you have questions about the topic discussed, we'll be addressing them later. Dr. Shahir Liew will now discuss our second topic, digitalization in oil and gas as a new normal.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope all of you are doing fine and keeping yourself safe in wherever you are dialing in from. Thank you to the organizing committee. I appreciate that. Before I start, I want to leave behind a fruit for thoughts for everybody because this is something that's rather critical and important that you need to understand. If you take a look at digitalization as a whole, if you would like to correlate what is happening in the world today, just take a look at Apple, look at Google, and look at Amazon. And you take any of these three companies, the assets are bigger than any of the oil company combined in the world put together. So you have a rough idea what oil and gas industry is all about when you talk about people who are far ahead, far much further than oil and gas industry. So today I just want to discuss about that. There's a fruit for thoughts is on the digitalization of oil and gas in the new normal. Next. Okay, what we are talking about in digitalization oil and gas as the new normal is what we are facing at the moment, and things are changing very rapidly, and it will be like that for the next 3 years. And if you're looking at the opportunities as well as how you want to implement this is the timing where everybody else is shifting their focus and goals in ensuring that they remain competitive. Next one. Next. Right? We all experience this, a world in a lockdown environment. You realize that how coronavirus is affecting the oil and gas industry. We don't have to go very far. If you take a look at the two US aircraft carrier, USS Ronald Reagan and USS Theodore Roosevelt, they are rendered non-functional when it's affected the whole crew in the high sea, when at the point when they are defending the world. And this is something that we have to think about, what this thing can be doing to the offshore industry as well. Next one. Right, first one we look at is the rig infection. It was looked at from Norwegian oil and gas company Equinor. They first noted that the offshore worker had contracted coronavirus, and as such, the employee worked on the rig in a Martin Lynch field in the North Sea, and they have difficulty in operating thereafter. Now, if you're looking at the work done on the rig, this is also critical. I think we have some cases here locally as well, happen in the rig, but this is something that everybody else in the oil and gas, especially the offshore industry, has to look at. This is far more critical because you don't get to move around that easily in terms of logistics in the rigs when you have difficulty in terms of infection. Next one. The other one is about travel restriction. I mean, I'm proud to say that our country, Malaysia, had done very well in terms of controlling the COVID spread as opposed to many countries. But if you look at in terms of travel restriction, the Royal Dutch Shell was one of the first companies to announce it was suspending travel for its employee. Petronas has come in quite hard in terms of how they want to deal with COVID-19, and we have a set policy that we are following very closely, and we are proud to say that it has been quite successfully implemented. But this is actually, while it's successfully implemented at the field and the ground level, it doesn't mean that the overall does not impact the bottom line of the company. Next one. So we have oil prices crash. I think it's quite obvious. If you look at the Google satellite, you see that all our air are clean now. In about 2 months ago, it was very clean. And also you will see the pollution level has dropped significantly. Everybody are actually far more healthier. I know personally I'm healthier as well because I tend to sanitize more, you know, as opposed to normal time when I don't have to do that. So these are where I call it the golden opportunity, where we have to relearn from the very basic of where we are, what we are, and what we plan to do. So with the oil prices crash, next one. Okay, people start asking questions like, how can the oil price be in the negative? Well, it's very simple. You know, you don't have demand, therefore the price will drop drastically. And this is actually the holding cost for the oil and gas producer. I think you can see from here that by itself, although COVID-19 was first identified in China, it has caused a tremendous economic slowdown simply because China has been one of the biggest consumer in terms of oil and gas. And then OPEC country, they do not come into terms, and I think they flip-flop their decision all the time. As you can see, even until today, they cannot make a good decision in terms of where the output or the production is going to be. Next one. So demand drop as usual. I think my colleague Dr. Budi had mentioned about aircraft industry, transportation industry. So these are where people are holding back. Even in Malaysia, transportation has dropped significantly. All the local travels, aircraft, and so on. So this is part and parcel of where we talk about demand drops at the same time. Next one. Okay, and this is something that we all need to know, that the International Energy Agency, they have predicted an annual decrease in demand of 90,000 barrels per day. So this is the largest fall in a decade. So that itself tells us a lot. Saudi Arabia that has been producing what, 10, 11, 12 million, is also cutting out on the production. So global oil demand will grow by 5.7 million barrels per day over the next 5 years, at an average annual rate of 950,000. So this is a sharp reduction of 1.5. Obviously, you can see that this decrease is quite significant, and as a result of the coronavirus, the growth rebound will be happening in the year 2021, and again, it will decelerate. Next one. So now, talking about adapting to the new normal, this is the after effect of COVID-19. Let's have next slide, please. Right. So what we do is to keep oil and gas workforce safe. Now, we all know that in oil and gas, safety is of paramount importance. We do not compromise profit over safety. So safety has always been the key issue in every discussion that we have in oil and gas. So as such, when we talk about keeping oil and gas workforce safe, we are looking at what do we do in digitalization to support contact tracing. Even at our own university, we develop our own software to do that. And we also talk about what are the SOP that is required and how do we automate health screening. This is a very important part of the workforce in keeping them safe. Saying all of that, like I said before, safety is number one. It's of paramount importance. And as such, we are not looking at money or profit when we're talking about safety. So with development of workforce health screening in terms of the biological aspect of it, as well as the mobility and contact tracing application. Next one. Enabling remote working. Now, all of us have experienced this to a certain extent. I think this, to me, I'm not sure about some of you participants, but as far as I'm concerned, I tend to be more productive. Of course, my guys not going to like me that much because I can have meeting on the spot, you know. Rather than say, can you come to my office? It will take about 30 minutes. But now I say, can you go online? It takes about two minutes to do that. So this is one of the things that we talk about, enabling remote working condition. We're talking about accessibility. But there are difficulty in this because, you know, 50% of the world are without Wi-Fi support, right? So this is another issue that must be tackled holistically, although many countries are talking about online learning, but it is not feasible in other countries, and especially in Asian country where people do not have access to mobility, e-mobility. This is a very important part of it. So that's one of the things that we want to talk about is enabling remote working. What does it take to do that, right? We shift to 5G, so what, right? How many people will have access to that? Next one. Right, what I want to share a little bit more is the operational excellence through digitalization in oil and gas industry. This is an important slide. It is diagrammatic, right? It's always shown in pictorial format. Number one, in the past, we have a lot of sensors from the oil and gas production. It can come from many sensors. I have taken a look at even the smallest platform. You are looking at least 300 sensors that's going on at the same time. In the past, we haven't done much about it. We don't care about it because this is business as usual. So people don't look into too much detail of that. That's the first part. Second part, we're talking about integrated operation center. When we talk about digitalization, we have to integrate where we work from, what our digital twin looks like, what we see here and what they have on site. That's the second part. The third part, we're talking about real time in terms of oil field services, where we can obtain the data on the dot, and also we can provide surveillance drone on some of the cases that we are looking at, right, in terms of services that have been provided. And on the number 4, we talk about real-time analytics. Real-time analytics provide online decision-making processes. In the past, it's been like, oh, we have some difficulty, we talk to each other, then we make a decision. By the time it happens, it will take a few days to do that. But now, with the real-time analytics, this has been able to overcome many of the operational aspects where we have difficulty in the past. And then number 5, we're talking about smart devices. Today, we have a lot of devices that you can pick from the shelf, actually. And these are very cheap devices, and you can use it quite significantly, quite widely. And then you look at about 3D printers is available. Of course, oil and gas, we don't talk so much about 3D printers. And then we also talk about tablet, smart glasses, talking about AI, visual reality. We have been doing, for example, we have been doing training for safety using VR now. People don't have to leave their workplace to do that. They don't have to go to the site to do that. Of course, going to the site is nice so you can have a feel for it. But when you have VR, you actually have the real thing in hand. Next one. All right. So in a nutshell, when you talk about emerging technology support digitalization in oil and gas, we have done quite a fair bit of this in our own university environment, as when we look at all the other oil and gas operational aspect of it. Number 1, we look at multimedia, how we relate to VR, visual reality, right? And also we are talking about artificial intelligence, AI, Internet of Things, and also blockchain technology in the area of logistics. When we're looking at integrated and intelligent automation in oil and gas, there are 4 areas that we have been looking at very heavily on. Number 1, smart design and construct. This is in dealing with product, plant, building and infrastructure. And then you look at smart operation and maintenance. We are talking about asset performance and operation performance. Smart supply chain, talk about parts, material and supply. And also smart services, we're talking about monitoring outcomes and so on. So these are the overall emerging technology to support digitalization in oil and gas. Many companies are actually facing this difficulty because, how to prioritize the thing. So at the very onset of this, normally operational excellence will come to the forefront, because this is where you're talking about cost-cutting measure takes place, how you maximize your output, how you reduce your maintenance costs because you are able to do predictive analysis through big data, and so on. And these are part and parcel of digitalization that's going on in oil and gas at the moment. And obviously, like Internet of Things, how many of us are actually looking at turbo machinery, for example, right? When you have turbo machinery, how often will you be able to predict accurately when your machine is going to fail? So with these things coming into play, you would expect that we tend to be more efficient in many ways. And as we become more efficient, obviously there are other areas that will be impacted. I've been asked question, what are the things that typically be affected? Number 1, we are talking about reduction in labor force. It's quite obvious because a lot of manual things can be automated. That's the first part. Second part is we are able to cut down on our repair costs, maintenance costs, operational costs, simply because we are able to use the data smartly. We are able to dissect the data and analyze the data accordingly. So as part and parcel of moving towards digitalization in oil and gas, the initial experience would be, what are the area of priority that you're looking at? That's the first part. Second part, what sort of operational aspect that you are cutting out? And then the third part is, how do you make your operation more efficient and more effective, right? So these are the thing that digitalization is all about. But of course, digitalization as a whole is something that we have to work around the parameters of different oil and gas operator. I think different people, different oil and gas operator actually will look at the priority differently, right? Because is it upstream? Is it downstream? Is it midstream? So upstream, they have their own priorities. Downstream, they have their own priorities as well. So with that, based on our own research environment and our own consulting environment that we have done in digitalization, we feel like we are just barely touching the tip of it. And the real market the real cost in doing digitization, if you compare that with the operational cost and the savings that you're going to get, indirect saving and direct savings, is going to far outweigh anything else. So as such, personally, I think digitalization must take place in oil and gas, whether you like it or not, and it's happening now. A lot of companies are moving very far ahead and they are moving very fast. I think this is an important part because for the next 3 years, either you catch on or you don't catch on. So these are the time frame that we have looked at, all right, in the near term. But over the long run, if you have not done much on digitalization in the next 5 years, you have probably lost out in terms of your competitive edge. Next one. So that's all that I have. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share.
Thank you, Professor. For our third topic for today, let's have Engineer Harthwell Capistrano to talk about the impact of COVID-19 among global workers in oil and gas industry.
Thank you, Faith. All right, so greetings from Qatar. So right now here in Qatar, it's 10:52 in the morning. And yeah, there in the Philippines and in Malaysia, I guess it's around nearly 4 o'clock and 3 o'clock in Indonesia. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone, most especially our major partners, UTP, for making this possible. Of course, with Palawan State University, UP, as well as Batangas State University, Adanson University, and all other oil and gas companies around the world who are one way and another supporting our event today. And of course, some of my colleagues that are online right now. Thank you so much. So my topic is about impact of COVID-19 on migrant oil and gas workers. I'm actually, I should supposed to be flying back to the Philippines because I work here for 28 days offshore and 28 back. Back home in the Philippines. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, this is the longest ever in my life to be away from home. But this is the thing that's beyond my control, beyond our control. So we have to face it and hope for the best that, you know, all of these things will come to pass soon once we have the vaccine. And for us in the oil and gas, we are experiencing a lot of changes and how we cope. You know, as we see the new normal, and like what Dr. Budi and Dr. Shahir have mentioned a while ago, that the industry has been dramatically been affected, and specifically as all of us as migrant oil and gas workers. Next slide, please. The picture I'm gonna show you. This is my home, my second home. This is in the offshore in Qatar. It's actually one of the production platforms that we are actually producing around 300,000 of barrels of oil per day. And yeah, and this is already considered to be my second home. In my whole life, in the last 10 years, I've been in the project. So, you know, this is already part of my life, because half of my life, half a year, I'm always here. So if you go to the next slide, that's the picture where Qatar is. It's a small country, and like Malaysia and the rest of the oil and gas producing countries, Qatar is #1 in terms of gas exports. It is the #1 LNG producer. And of course, oil as part of its exports make the economy of Qatar to be on the front line. All right, next slide. So in my topic, I'll be focusing on the migrant oil and gas workers. As you can see on the next slide, the picture showing this could be the typical photo that you could be seeing, most especially for those workers working in the oil and gas. So let's define first what is a migrant worker. On the next slide, the International Labor Organization defines it as a migrant worker is a person who either migrates within their home country or outside it to pursue work. So migrant workers usually do not have the intention to stay permanently in the country or region in which they work. So if you look at it, I'm a migrant worker myself. Most of us, especially here in Qatar and the rest of the countries in the Middle East, we say we are a migrant worker if we left our respective, homes and travel abroad, primarily to earn money and, of course, for us to contribute to the economy of our country. Now, unfortunately, because of COVID-19, because of the pandemic, we are greatly impacted by this. Now, next slide. I've been trying to scour or identify the real data or statistics in terms of the number of COVID-19 cases among oil and gas workers. Unfortunately, because of some data privacy and some of the countries are not publishing it. But I have gone through with some of the data available. I would like to highlight, for example, here in Qatar, the government is very active, proactively, to be specific, in terms of mitigating or controlling the spread of COVID-19, and we have control measures in place. So I'm going to share that to you in my slides later on. Now, in the next slide, you can see just last month, the news reported by Bloomberg that a lot of oil and gas workers in Mexico have, succumbed to the disease, to the virus. Approximately, according to the news, around how many? 202 employees were affected because of the virus, and these are the numbers that we are also seeing in other companies that failed to control and mitigate the effects and transmission of the virus. Like what Dr. Shahir mentioned, if we are in an offshore environment like what we have, we are in a very confined space. I mean, we are in a small environment where we work very closely. We cannot maintain social distance, and our HVAC system, for example, it's not really designed like in the hospital that we can control the airflow. We can filter the airflow and things like that. So these are the limitations, especially if you work in the oil and gas, specifically in the offshore. Now, on the next slide, there was also a news in May where in the North Sea, they were able to evacuate around 200 suspected COVID-19 cases due to the possibility that some of the crew got infected. So it's a bit scary, to be honest, especially during the time that we are in the peak of COVID-19, especially in my work site, because we don't know, some of the workers might be asymptomatic and things like that. But what we actually do, we make sure in our company that we have this 14-day quarantine, strict quarantine, and on the 12th day of your quarantine, you will be subjected to PCR test. So if the result of your PCR is positive, then you have to wait for another 2 weeks, 2 weeks or 3 weeks to stay in the hotel. Unless, of course, the worker will be manifesting signs and symptoms of COVID-19, then we will be bringing the crew to the facility or to the hospital. Now, on the next slide, like what Dr. Budi also mentioned a while ago, that there are a lot of retrenchments, layoff among the oil and gas workers. And not only that, companies are actually filing bankruptcy, a lot of losses that we are seeing and reading on the news. And on the next slide, one of the articles that Forbes published, it says in there that offshore oil platforms basically could be a real deal or a real score in terms of having a great havoc or a great effect whenever there is a spread of COVID-19. All right. Now, also in the next slide, in Kazakhstan, according to the news last June, there were around 1,000 cases that being recorded among the oil and gas workers. So the number could really be staggering. Especially those who haven't been tested, or those that might be asymptomatic. And in the clinical perspective, the number of days post exposure will also determine the the reaction on the PCR. So I'll not be discussing more about that, but the importance of quarantine is very crucial. That's why in our company, the strict enforcement of 14-day quarantine is a must. All right, now on the next slide, as of last night, I've checked the number of cases, the global cases. We are looking at around 22 million cases. And that could be really too much, actually. And the number is going higher and higher in countries that they cannot be able to control the cases. Now, next slide. The active cases, or the new cases rather, as of August 19 is around 274,000. That could be the daily number of cases. Now, next slide. So what is the impact of COVID-19 among the migrant oil and gas workers? Next slide. Number one is the exposure to COVID-19 disease. Now, if you look at it, especially those who are onshore, for example, if they live or if they work or if they are being accommodated in an area where there is a poor hygiene or poor sanitation, then there is a higher risk of transmission. And if in any case that the workers cannot be able to ensure or follow protocols to prevent transmission, then the possibility of transmission could be very high. Next slide. This is the number one concern that all of us are actually being exposed to, having mental health and psychosocial effects. Mind you, it's the first time that I was quarantined for 14 days. That's my first time ever in my whole life to be confined in a room and that nobody to talk to physically. So that has an effect on me. Good thing I was able to cope. So this is a big challenge to our oil and gas workers. Next slide. These were snippets coming from the publications online by The Guardian, where migrant workers were actually begging for food, but according to the government, which is Qatar, is very good in providing support. Qatar government is providing everything, especially those who have been affected by by COVID-19. Next slide. The migrant workers are also affected in terms of their tenure of their work. Like on the next slide, financial instability and work tenure, we are greatly affected, like here in Qatar, for example, where there are governments started to lay off and release employees, like in my company as well. You could either be either retrenched, released, or you will be having 30 to 40% salary cut. So you just choose. But it's better, it's better to have the cut anyway, rather than being released from the company. So that's the challenge. So next slide. So how could we be able to control the impact of COVID-19 among oil and gas workers? So the first one here, next slide, is to strengthen the support system. What we are looking at is the support system coming from the employers and the companies. They should ensure that they provide emotional support. Not only that, assurance that they are, available to help them and to provide them mental support and emotional support as well. The government, wherever the migrant worker or workers are working, may it be in Qatar or the other places, make sure that you keep in touch with the government, your own government, where you live, and your mother country, to ensure that whenever there are some concerns in terms of whatever concerns you have, then the government will be there to help you, and of course your families back home. Thankfully, we have our social media where we can call, where we can Skype or do Facebook call or whatever. That's a good thing as well. And of course, our loved ones and friends who are there to support us and for us to talk to, in times like this. Now, next slide. So all of us know about this. We keep on telling our guys, our crew, to hand wash. There is no need for us to wear gloves actually. All we have to do is just to ensure that we hand wash, we use alcohol and sanitizer, and use mask whenever we are in the public spaces. And right now, a face shield, like in the Philippines, is actually required. So we need to be proactive and making sure that we don't touch surfaces. And make sure that we wash our hands regularly. We wear the correct mask whenever we are in the public spaces or wherever. Like for example, if you are in the offices, for example. But in the offshore where I work, we don't wear masks because all of us have been tested. Because if you are positive, you cannot be able to fly offshore. All right. Furthermore. Next slide. In terms of mental health and well-being, we need to ensure open and continuous communication. That's what I know, and that's what I did, just to make sure that we have this open and continuous communication with our significant others. You know what? The problem also, especially in the oil and gas, especially in the offshore, all of us are men. I mean, we seldom find female workers, like in my case, where I work. So we are attuned as men that we are strong, and we actually hesitant to share what we feel. But right now, we need to encourage our workers to be open and to share whatever they feel. Of course, making sure that we have enough supply of food, making regular exercise, take vitamins, sleep at least 7 to 8 hours a day, and having a positive outlook and mindset, and ensure your spiritual life. Now, whatever religion you have, make sure that you are in touch with your faith. You have to be, ensure that you do meditation, you do yoga, whatever possible. All right, next slide. And the World Health Organization basically released this mental health and psychosocial considerations during COVID-19 outbreak. So for those oil and gas workers, you can go through these in the website of World Health Organization. So next slide. Yeah, all of us are, we never expect this to happen. To be honest, I am not prepared for this. All the plans that I have for 2020, I did not expect this to happen actually. But what is a good thing for us is for us to be resilient. We need to, I keep on saying about being proactive. I keep on saying about being having a positive mindset. Now, it's easier to say than done, actually, but we need the help and support of our colleagues. We need the help and support of our company. And we have to see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's how I see it. And looking at the forecasts, what will happen to us? What will happen to petroleum engineering students who are studying right now? What will happen to me, for example? What I embodied in myself is to take one step at a time. And I told myself that I need to survive this pandemic. And I'm pretty sure that next year will be a better year for everyone. So to summarize all of these things, all of us are affected, especially the oil and gas migrant workers like me and everyone who are away from home. Again, what is the best thing to do is let's support each other, and we continue to communicate with our loved ones, our families back home. So I guess that would be all, and I'll be catering questions later. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Engineer Harthwell Capistrano. Now let's hear from our first reactor, Mr. Zaimizi Hamdani.
Okay, thank you, Faith, for the introduction. I think we'd like to thank Dr. Budi, Prof. Shahir, as well as Engineer Harthwell for the sharing. That is a very interesting sharing, the impact of COVID to the industry and from different angle as well. I think it's fairly clear that we all feel the impact. We are all affected by COVID-19, whether we as individuals in the society or we as a participant within the industry throughout the value chain. And we can see how grave is the situation from COVID-19 through the reduction in demand on the energy mix from the different society here. And you can see also the changes here, that it is putting a lot of pressure to the industry, especially for the traditional oil and gas, airlines, because people are not moving. Everybody gets basically remain in their own place without especially international traveling. And effectively, it is forcing the organization to change, whether they like it or not. Then we really have to respond to it. And you can see also from all these factors, we are looking into the rise in the importance of digitalizations, connectivity, and I think from the conversation, from the sharing from Dr. Budi, Prof. Shahir, as well as Engineer Harthwell, we can see that we actually need to change, to look into to overcome the challenges. And there are a few things that I think useful for us to relook on the way how we are responding to this situation. I think there's also some comments on the things that is impacting us the most, which is us, the humanities, and effectively on how we deal with the people who are losing jobs, how are we strengthening the social safety network, also support for those who's being impacted on the mental and also psychological effect in dealing with this. Few of my takeaway from this that I can see here is, one is whether we are a member of the society, we are a member of the industry, and also this is all useful for us in academia, industry, as well as maybe in governmental and regulators as well. It's about the sharing from Dr. Budi about the trending in energy mix. I think oil demand is decreasing, gas demand still increasing for power generation, and also we can see the advent or the emergence in a strong way from the renewable energy. So I think these are some of the pointers that is useful for all of us to be to take cognition and be aware that the move towards renewable energy will be coming soon as well there, and also the impact from the transportation sectors with the electrifications, as well as now I think the the restricted movement from the airline industry. So I think that's one. Maybe it's on the renewable. The other one is with the pressure of companies to continue to survive. I think the needs to reduce the operational cost is mounting, and I think the digitalization is one of the tools that can be harnessed in terms of making the use of resources more efficiently, and at the same time throughout the value chain of the oil and gas, we can see the opportunities coming from the digitalization work as well. So we can see it may change the focus from one industry, but also it give rise to another importance of creating different industry. So you have to be prepared on how the preparation of the workforces to support the changing landscape within the industry. And the third thing is talking about the physical, mental, and psychological state of the workers. I think we have spoken on how COVID has been impacting the workers on the platforms, which is a lot more critical because they are in very restricted areas where the spread of the disease could take place very quickly. And I think Prof. Shahir has mentioned some of the areas that we have developed before about tracing the contacts of people that could help to manage and control the spread of the disease, and identifying and also isolating the PUI. And thank you for Dr. Harthwell as showing about the tips on managing or supporting each other, in keeping the mental health, in check, especially in dealing with all these issues. I think these are all not only for the workers in the platform, but I think for all of us, even in the in the office environment as well. And looking from the changes that we have seen here, looking from the changes in the demand, renewables may become, I think it's emerging fairly strongly. Digitalization is, I think, making its headway, especially to help reduce operational costs, because we are using the resources more effectively and more efficiently. So I think, how are we responding to all this? The rallying call from the leaders in setting the direction is key, keeping the positivity of moving forward despite all the uncertainty. And I think the sharing from Dr. Budi about the agility, leading with a possibility with agility, I think is something that all organizations have to embrace. I think all of us do not know what the future holds, but I think the ability for the organization to be agile will help to overcome this thing, especially in looking into opportunities and executing it with pace. And also digitalization will also be the one that people have to embrace, as these are values that we could further tap in terms of reducing the cost for the operating companies, but also creating opportunities for the service industry within the digitalization to embrace. And I think one of the key here as well is, other than looking into the health and physical well-being for the workers, is about the preparation of the next generation of the workforce as well, because we are seeing all this trend coming, the changing in the landscape. So preparing the workforce to embrace the next ride or the next roller coaster will be important for us moving forward. Thank you so much. Over to you, Faye.
Thank you, Mr. Zaimizi. Engineer Jarico Padrones has some insights regarding the topics too.
To our distinguished speakers, Dr. Budi, Professor Shahir, and Engineer Harthwell, and my fellow reactors, and to all the participants, good afternoon. Change is really inevitable. As the saying goes, the only constant thing in this world is change. So in order for us to survive and prosper in every endeavor, we should be able to adapt with the fast-changing environment. So yes, it's absolutely true, as emphasized by our distinguished speakers, that abrupt obtrusion brought by this pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, has caught the world unprepared and struggled to cope with the challenges of this new normal. Everyone is affected in one way or another, even the oil and gas, as what we are talking about. The industry wasn't spared of the wrath of this submicroscopic virus that infected the society. We were swiftly dislodged as a result of unprecedented slowdown and contraction of all companies and the economies of all nations. And the demand for the oil and gas was tremendously slumped, that the companies resulted to downsizing the resources and laying off personnel in order to survive and struggle to thrive during these difficult times or trying times. In Dr. Budi's part, he mentioned about agility in the oil and gas company. It's very timely, okay, and relevant at this time. In these very challenging times, the high demand for the leadership agility, as what he described, characterized by the ability to learn rapidly, anticipate opportunities, and learn always and adapt quickly. The situation that we are in right now calls for a more dynamic capabilities, immediate interventions, and sound but quick decision making, and even entrepreneurial mindset. So those are among much needed elements to put the organization in a better position, as suggested by Dr. Budi. As he highlighted also, we need to introduce new approaches that will work in the current situation. On the other hand, Professor Shahir emphasized the new normal calls for digitalization, not only in the oil and gas industry, but most of the industries in the world. Just like in the academe, the paradigm has been shifted from from face-to-face to virtual schools and online classes. To those who have internet connection, actually, because not all areas are covered by internet. So there is no way to do these online classes. So this is now prevalent during the pandemic times, in order to preserve life and health, which is paramount for each and every one of us. Identifying activities, especially in the oil and gas, that can be done remotely, are now highly utilized. He mentioned about trainings online, and even data collection. Okay, even meetings are done online, where personnel, engineers, and workers in the oil and gas need not to meet face to face in order to discuss the business or the operation. So these are the things that we need to utilize to prevent any face-to-face interaction that poses danger of COVID-19 infection. Digitalization allows us to continue the business in the oil and gas industry remotely and satisfying both operational and health requirements. The utilization of the technology and process is actually an extension of the demands of industrial revolution. More and more companies introduce and implement automation, keeping their organizations competitive and efficient in this modern world. I certainly agree that one must possess advanced skills and understanding of these modern technologies in order to continue existence in the business during this era of advanced industrialization. AI, or artificial intelligence, is a thing that present, and one must be equipped with its operationality to improve efficiency in all aspects of the organization. In the last part, for Engineer Capistrano, he provided us the comprehensive view of the effects of the pandemic to the migrant workers. The unavoidable exodus of the workers from their host countries has put many people in an unsecured condition of their employments and economic status. That's all over the world. The worries of these migrant workers for their families back home somehow shifted their future plans and decisions. He also emphasized that some controls we can use to minimize the impact of COVID-19 among the oil and gas workers, installations, and things such as strengthening support systems, precautionary measures, and taking care of mental health and well-being, because these are all affected by this pandemic. Again, this is calling for personal discipline in helping communities contain the virus. Having all these changes and challenges we face in our lives, we must go on. The future invites us to follow the path. There is no way for us to stop. We may slow down a little bit, but we have to move forward. Our resiliency, adaptability, responsiveness, discipline, agility, as we emphasized, will be our arms in facing those challenges at hand. So I think that's the thing I can share. Thank you again to all the speakers for your informative and comprehensive presentations. Terima kasih for sharing your thoughts and precious time in this webinar. Good afternoon, magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Engineer Padrones. Of course, we have Dr. Wahyu Agung here to give his remarks as well.
Thank you, Faith. First of all, thank you, Dr. Budi Soetipjo, Prof. Shahir Liew, and Engineer Harthwell Capistrano for the excellent presentations and sharings. First of all, and also I agree with Harthwell about the impact of COVID-19 to the migrant worker. It's very hard. It just makes us realize that we do have to take care of ourselves and also take care of each other as well. And yeah, so basically this thing has a very hard impact to oil and gas as well. And in any case, the oil and gas industry is experiencing its third price collapse in 12 years. And COVID-19 pandemic basically exacerbating the loss in oil and gas industry. We saw the impact of COVID-19 to the price of oil and gas to the low of -$37. So these things, nonetheless, even before COVID-19 attack, from 2005 to January 2020, back with strong demand growth and efficiency, supply excess continued, oil and gas industry failed to keep pace with broader market. The average of the oil and gas industry generated annual TRS growth about 7% points lower than the S&P 500. So, well, basically, as Dr. Budi Soetipjo mentioned, the declining due to largely to change in the transport market, resulting from the shift to electrification, as well as global demand for gas, however, has more than doubled in the past 30 years. It will increase for another 2 decades, according to our model, peaking in 2035. Now, with the COVID-19, the question is how to operate safely and how to deal with the full storage, price falling below cash cost for some operator, and capital market closing for all but the largest players. So, oil and gas industry needs to cope with anxieties about the unknowable and uncontrollable world now. It used to be the biggest company. Now they're falling to keep up with the IT company. Now consider multiple perspectives to open up our field of vision by, for example, seeking out and listening to the opinion of people beyond our comfort zone needs to be done. And so in a way, very small shift needs to be done by the oil and gas company that can have significant consequences. All in all, it seems that oil and gas has to be efficient and capable to adapt sudden change. So, efficient, that means it has to lower the cost of operations as well as the capital expenditure, and capable to adapt the sudden change. Maybe in the future the main consumer of oil and gas may not be the transport industry, maybe. So they need to catch all the possible market. Now, regarding the cost, digitalization has been described by Prof. Shahir Liew through smart design, smart operation and maintenance, as well as smart supply chain and smart services, has proven to actually lower the cost. For instance, the maintenance cost we can predict now. We realize that data is probably a valuable thing, especially in oil and gas. By being able to predict when and where the next maintenance is required, we can actually allocate the resource much more efficiently. Now, before COVID-19 vaccine can be invented, digitalization also helped reduce the impact of COVID-19 spreading among workers. I mean, we can do online meeting as well as other things online now. Now, digitalization has been supported by the following technology. For instance, AI and machine learning, that is very important to predict, for instance, regarding the maintenance, maybe multimedia, AR and augmented reality and VR, Internet of Things, blockchain technology, as well as the tremendous improvement with the sensor technology that currently we have. Now, don't forget that we also in the brink of 5G technology. Yes, 5G technology requires internet connection. How about the offshore? Nah, this is where the 5G in IEEE has bring about the seamless combination of the data, the data between probably human to human, human to machine, and machine to machine. So all probably a data that can be transmitted from the VSAT signal can actually be can be operated by people in the city. So that is very important, and we see that in the next 5 years time, as Prof. Shahir Liew mentioned, that this is the time we actually need to transform. Digitalization is one of the key. Whether the oil and gas company likes or not, they have to experience through that. So that is one of the key. We can actually reduce the cost tremendously by digitalization. Now, we can also improve the the company by using agility approach that has been mentioned by Dr. Budi Soetipjo. Now, why is it important? Because agility means that the company has to adapt with whatever the technology, the market demands. Now, the ability to quickly respond is the key, and organization agility is enhancing by creating autonomous market-focused teams that can move rapidly to create and define new opportunity, allowing values to evolve to match and the desired culture and firm identity. So, and market opportunity, we can focus on market opportunity rather than market share. So, in that sense, rather than competing with the other oil and gas company, we need to actually share the market and we create new value. And so that means we together needs to provide solution to the market, and we need to define the competition rather and creating new arena. So all in all, agility approach can only be achieved if leaders need to change. So leaders has to be agile. Employee has to be agile. So that means we need to create a lifelong learner for all the employee leaders, so that we can make the oil and gas company thrive in the future. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wahyu Agung. Now it's time for us to address our participants' questions and concerns regarding the topics discussed by our speakers. For question number 1, this is for Dr. Budi from Mr. Harold. The question is it good for oil companies to invest in other businesses to ensure their survival?
Okay, thank you for the question, Mr. Harold. Before I address your question, we need to understand this, that what we need to do for the oil and gas company is to provide solution for the situation. The past solution is transportation. Okay, so the mindset is not like the oil and gas company is selling oil or petroleum. No. Okay, in the past they provide solution for transportation. One of them, the main solution is transportation. But now, like Professor Shahir mentioned, Engineer Harthwell also mentioned, now it's time to change, because we are now get used to work at home. We travel much less. Okay, so we cannot provide the same solution for different habits, for different behavior. In other words, we have to project what kind of behavior in the future with all technology. Professor Shahir already described the use of technology, the smart technology. You know, we don't have to visit the on-site with drone. Okay, that means we travel much less. We can have this webinar from home. I'm home because it's holiday. I'm from home. So we need to imagine, we need to envision the future, what it looks like. That's number one, because the key for the survival is providing solution. That's very important. Number two, we need to begin with what we have. We cannot provide solution with what we don't have. Okay, because that means we don't have the competency, we don't have the capability. You know, we have to learn much more. Okay, so in my opinion, we don't go outside the oil and gas industry. We have oil, we have gas. So we need to project what behavior that can be related to this oil and gas. Then we provide solution. Okay, don't go outside of that boundary, because otherwise you have to learn the new competencies, the new capabilities, which are not easy these days. Takes time. Okay, so if you want to invest in other businesses, you know, other than oil and gas, I suggest related businesses. For example, now we all know that we need all the health equipment. You know, like Engineer Harthwell mentioned about the face shield, face mask. What can we do about those? What can the oil and gas produce, you know, to provide those things? I think this is a shock as well for the health equipment. They've never expected this many demands. You know, we remember at the beginning, Indonesia, for example, it's very difficult even to get the face mask. You know, let alone the face shield. Universitas Pertamina produce our own hand sanitizer in the land. Okay, because we cannot find somewhere else. It's all gone. You know, so these are opportunities. What can we do? What can the oil and gas do to provide these solutions for the people in the future? Like Engineer Harthwell mentioned, we will have to, at least for 2-3 years, we need to maintain the health protocol, you know. So what can the oil and gas do to help people? So we need to think outside the transportation, outside the power production, for example, for the oil and gas. What else? Those are the questions that I mentioned in my presentation. Those are the critical questions that we have to ask. You know, we have to move beyond the core, the edge of our business, our assumptions, for example. We need to go that far to get the answers. We need to get the perspectives to get those to get the answers. So I think that's from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Budi. Second question for Professor Shahir Liew from Ahmad Saifullah. What is the actual proven value of digitalization after a few years we have embarked in this initiative?
All right. Thank you for the question. Good question. I love the question simply because it actually enlightened a lot of people to know that a lot of this, when you talk about digitalization, in most cases, when you're looking from the operational aspect, there are very little investment on the capex, right? That's the first part that we need to know. Second part is that even as they invest in the capex, if it need to be, then you will find that there is a substantial return, indirect return, in the form of cost savings arising from your operational costs. So that's the second aspect. Now the third aspect, if you look at this digitalization, it goes from field to field, topic to topic, sector to sectors. Anything else, everything else, it can be digitized. Number one. Number two, data analysis actually involves data science. It's not a rocket science at all. It's no big deal for a lot of people to do this. We just need to build that capability. By the end of the day, the value created by digitalization is going to be humongous. I couldn't imagine if an operational cost cannot be cut across the board by at least 30% by going through digitalization exercise. So this is the first thing that we do. Second thing is to be able to answer your question holistically, we need to have more data because this involves a very big area in oil and gas. We have upstream, downstream, you know. But as far as operating cost is concerned, 30% is almost given when you do this. So this is my answer to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shahir Liew. Question number 3 is for Mr. Harthwell Capistrano from Hinata Shoyo. The question is, after flattening the COVID-19 curve or the post-COVID-19 era, will the world's oil and gas company demand more petroleum engineers? Will the employment rate of petroleum engineers increase or decrease?
All right. Thank you, Faith. Thank you, Hinata, for the question. We are really looking at the possibility of rebound. There will be spike of demand. That's how we see it. Though, of course, some forecasts are saying that there will be a spike by 2021, and then it will gradually go down. You know, things like that. We have to remember that oil and gas industry is a highly volatile industry. In 2016, I remember 2016, 2015. That was the first time I experienced that there was massive retrenchments as well. The oil price back then reached, I remember, as low as 12, I guess. But now COVID-19 is even worse. For petroleum engineering students, this could be one of the fears that you have in your mind right now. Again, I cannot, you know, it's not really healthy for me to say, don't worry. You know, in clinical perspective, saying don't worry is not healthy, actually. But, you know, what we have to do right now is to embrace what we have and to prepare ourselves. I always advise this to students, especially for those who are not, you know, who are still in the college or those who are fresh graduates. Always prepare yourself professionally. You know, prepare or package yourself. How do I mean? What do I mean by package yourself? if you have earned your BS degree on petroleum engineering, don't just focus in there. Continue in learning. Get masters. Get more specializations, like what Professor Dr. Shahir you mentioned about AI, for example, automation, and things like that. You can sidetrack, or you can take related specializations, and at the end of the day, you can go anywhere. You can maintain your degree in the oil and gas, and you can support other departments as well. So what I would like to highlight is, yeah, there is a good possibility that the demand will still be there as long as the world is using oil and gas. Then the demand will stay. That's how I see it. But if you look at the data, there are predictions, there are forecasts, and again, let's go back to the highly volatility nature of the oil and gas. But for students, professionals alike, we just have to make sure that we develop skills, more skills that we can make possible. You can focus on other areas, or make sure that, again, your total package as a professional is highly mixed. So yeah, we just have to embrace what we have right now, and we have to have that positive mindset that we are seeing a brighter future. I guess that's the only thing that I would like to highlight. That um, don't just stuck with the fear that what would tomorrow would bring us. Let's just take one step at a time. Thank you, Faith.
Thank you, Engineer Harthwell Capistrano. Next, for Dr. Budi, the question is from Monina Forbes. The question is, how is the industry responding on these uncertainties?
Is it for me?
For Dr. Budi, yes, sir.
Okay. So the question is how
Is
the industry responding. Okay.
How is the industry responding on these uncertainties?
Okay. I think not just the ONG industry. Everybody is not ready for this. Yeah. It's particularly hard for the ONG because they have a heavy investment. They cannot simply run away. If you have a restaurant, a cafe, you can just close and send the employees home. But for oil and gas, what happened to the rig? What happened to these beautiful rigs that Engineer Harthwell showed to us? You cannot just simply abandon those rigs, right? How about the oil that they have produced or they have already put in the storage? No one buys, So I think it takes the more expensive the investment, the more difficult the companies shift or move on. Okay, because they have to think, would this be a sunk cost, abandoned investment, or what? Because the fix is very high. So I think the oil and gas industry now try to move on, but still, in my opinion, still there is an expectation, for the price to recover. However, in my opinion, we cannot just expect. We have to do something. Yeah, in addition to expectation. Again, like the previous question with Mr. Harold, I think ONG companies need to start thinking about the alternatives. Okay. Of course, it's uncertainties. No one knows, but again, we can do based on the data. We do the data analytics. The problem with data analytics with the big data, the data talks about the past, not the future. So somehow this is a challenge. What's going to happen with us in the future? Okay. So I think going back to the questions, so in my opinion, they are not really ready, but they are still right now try to compose themselves. Like Professor Shahir mentioned, they try to make the operation more efficient with technology. Yeah, hopefully, they still have some savings, to do so that they can improve or make the operation more efficient. Of course, they cut costs, just like Engineer Harthwell mentioned, by sending the people home, cut them loose, something like that. But that's not enough. When when the business is back, they cannot simply rehire them. Okay, because there are what we call broken promises. You promise to employ them for a certain period of time, and suddenly in the middle you cut them. So the engagement, the feeling is different than before. So we have to understand that. Okay, so I think now still in transition, they already try to make it efficient. They try to find solutions, but it has to be very fast, very quick. They cannot carry those reserves for too long. They cannot operate with the same old way because the cost will be higher like that. So I think in survival now, the response, in my opinion, transition, they try to compose themselves, but they have to start now to think about the alternatives. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Budi. Next is from Jason Patrick Tinlak for Professor Engineer Dr. Shahir Liew. The question is, with the digitalization becoming a new normal, what advice can you give to fresh graduates in order to cope with the current demands of the industry?
This question is very relevant to the current graduate that's going to come out from the university, because the way I see it, guys, is that the digitalization is going to be part and parcel of your life in the real working world, whether you like it or not. Give you an example. My generation is some of the best generation simply because we have seen everything. We have seen where telephone needs to go to operator, and then we dial the phone, and then we got the handphone, we got the mobile phone, and then we got the telex, now we got the internet, all that sort of things. So we have gone through all of those things, and these are all challenges actually that we have managed to survive. I'm sure Pak Budi will say the same thing. But I think along the way, for the new graduates, you have, whether you like it or not, you must have skill in working with IT, you must have skill in working with data, and you must have some form of analytics capability in looking at big data, because that's what it is. In the past, we have ignored big data, and we have also not been looking carefully in terms of what the big data can contribute to our professional working life. But today, as you go out from the colleges and universities, you'll be faced with this modern day problem. What are you going to do with those data? How do you interpret those data? And with that interpretation of data, how meaningful is going to be? And how does that, is that an impetus for your business that you are working on? Is that going to be something that you want? Because, in the old days, when we talk about data, it's very straightforward. Garbage in, garbage out. And that will not change even in the near future. Garbage in, garbage out. So the data must be meaningful as you interpret the data. And as you do it, I have a lot of my colleagues working on artificial intelligence and machine learning. Great, fantastic. But I think there will be a limitation one day where this thing cannot be deployed further, simply because we must be doing the right thing in terms of putting in the right data, getting the right answers. So for the graduates, it's high time that you have to learn all these skills. And a lot of these skills are embedded in some of the universities today. But I think the level of embedment of this IT or this data science skill are at a very primitive stage, right? It's at best, and it's an awareness level. So I think you have to develop your own strength, either by attending extra classes or doing extra things in the form of making yourself acquainted with big data science, and how do you digest big data science, and how do you interpret that? That's my advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shahir Liew. Next, for Engineer Harthwell Capistrano from Mark Aris Norque. The question is, Despite of having economical breakdown in oil and gas industry, is there any opportunities for those migrant workers that might lose their job or careers because of this pandemic? What path lies ahead for the industry in handling workers for the coming months and years?
All right. Thank you, Faye. Thank you also for the question, Mark, Ares, Lorke. These are the questions that we all face in the industry at the moment. All of us workers, oil and gas workers, these are our greatest fear, losing our jobs. So again, the assurance is the assurance would rely on ourselves, how we could be able to cope up with the situation, and where do we go once we are being retrenched. Now, in spite of all these things, there are companies that are having expansions. In fact, in here in Qatar, there are leading oil and gas companies that, in spite of pandemic, in spite of the downturn of oil and gas, there are projects ongoing. So why it's still ongoing? Because the budget has been in place long before COVID-19 pandemic, affected everyone. So that's how we see it. There are instances, of course, that majority of oil and gas workers are left for nothing. That's the reality at the moment. But again, like what I've mentioned earlier ago, that would depend upon the skill set of the workers being retrenched. Like, for example, if you have the experience with you, you have the wealth of experience with you, then of course you have the higher chance of getting the job, if not the same company, with other company later on. Other workers are actually venturing out in other fields of expertise, as long as they have the right skill set. Okay, so in terms of the industry handling the influx of applicants, especially if there will be if there is a rebound or spike in the oil and gas, then we are expecting that next year. We are also expecting that even in my own company, that in 2021, mid 2021, towards the end of 2021, we are expecting the rise of oil and gas. Hopefully, God willing, once we have the vaccine in place. So yeah, in spite of all of these things, in spite of losing jobs, what we have to do as oil and gas workers is to equip ourselves and to be resilient, so that once the opportunity arrives, then we have the higher stake of getting the job. Thank you, Faye. All right.
Thank you, Engineer Harthwell Capistrano. I'm afraid that's all the questions we can entertain at the moment, but don't worry. Questions will be compiled and sent to our speakers, and the answers will be emailed to you directly. Well, that concludes our international webinar for today. Our deepest gratitude to our beloved speakers and reactors, and to everyone who helped make this webinar possible. To Petroshphere Incorporated, Universiti Teknologi Petronas, Palawan State University, Universitas Pertamina, Batangas State University, Adamson University, and all other oil and gas companies around the world, thank you very much for participating and supporting our successful webinar. We hope that this webinar gave you useful information regarding the current situation we are in. We already sent you the link for the evaluation email, and please wait for others, and you will receive your certificate once you submitted the evaluation form. Again, thank you very much and stay safe.